to the Grindhouse.
Yeah!
With the 1980, Bill Lustig's Maniac. For those of you who aren't familiar with this movie, this is a bona fide Grindhouse film. It played on 42nd Street in New York. It incensed feminists. It pissed off the critics. It's the true thing. And we have it here tonight, and we also have director Bill Lustig in person. Of course, before the movie, we also have for you some of the coolest, weirdest vintage trailers, courtesy of Vagrancy Films, who, by the way, did an awesome screening of Zombie last week. Yes, thank you very much, guys. I'd like to first of all thank our sponsors, Blue Underground, Rue Morgue Radio, and iMagazine. And here's the point in time where I do a bunch of trivia. Let's see how prepared I am. Okay, hold on a second. Okay, what does Dave usually say? As it says, if you know an answer, don't shout it out, stand up, put your hand up, and we'll pick you out of the crowd. Of course, I can't see any of you, so we'll see how well that goes. Okay, first one. Oh, here's a good one. In Maniac, which horror icon plays the character Disco Boy? Oh, right there. Tom Savini is correct. Come on, we'll get your prize. Good job. He gets his head blown off really good, too. Oh, sorry, was that a spoiler? Yeah. Come on, is he Maniac? Okay. All right, let's see here. Oh, what was the last feature William Lustig directed? Ah, right back there.
Uncle Sam.
Uncle Sam is correct. Come on up. Good for you. How many prizes do we have? 5? One more. Okay. All right, let's see. Okay. Bill Lustig has a brief on-screen appearance in Maniac. What role does he play? Right here.
He plays the man at the lobby before they go up, before the hooker test.
That's right, he's a hotel desk clerk. Come on up, that's correct. Okay, this is an interesting one. In which James Bond film does Caroline Monroe get blown up in a helicopter? Anybody? Sorry, you already got one. You, sir? The Spy Who Loved Me is correct. Good for you. Okay, last one. Let's make it a good one. What do we have here, Dave? What do you put in there? Okay, for those of you who actually read Rue Morgue magazine, what was the last issue of Rue Morgue to feature an interview with Bill Lustig? Anybody? Man, you guys, you're breaking my heart. It was the Grindhouse issue. All right, okay, let's see, something else. Oh, okay, does anybody listen to Rue Morgue Radio? Anybody? Okay, let's pick another one then. Okay, among Joe Spinell's better-known mainstream film roles is the hitman he played in The Godfather and Godfather 2. What was the character's name? Has anybody seen The Godfather? Has anybody seen The Godfather Part 2? Jesus Christ, you? You know, just because you knew the last 3, you can have it. Alright, guys. Okay. Sorry, some announcements. As you can see, I'm really prepared. Okay, here's the good stuff. Tune in tomorrow to Rue Morgue Radio at ruemorgueradio.com as Feedback conducts part 2 of his loving interview with Yue Bull. The Gourmet drops by to help review Pete Walker's Schizo. The blood-spattered guy finds out if Riff Raff from the Rocky Horror Picture Show is still alive or dead. And DJ Toon Dragomir plays a killer selection of music from beyond. And don't forget that on May 26th at midnight, we'll be announcing the guests for this year's Festival of Fear at www.rue-morgue.com. Join us a month from now on Thursday, June 19th for Pakistan's first ever gore film, the zombie slasher Hell's Ground. Also, Rue Morgue is sponsoring the Best Worst Movie, Troll 2, on May 31st. Right here at the Florida Cinema at 9:30. And the cast is going to be here, including the troll. Lastly, I would like you guys to welcome Bill Lustig to Toronto. Bill's here all the way from New York City to introduce the film to you guys. So without further ado, Bill.
What's that?
Where are you? I can't see you.
You can't see me. I'm down here. Come down. Come further down to the balcony. Oh my God. Come on down. How can you not see me?
Up the stage.
Oh, okay. Anyway, God, it's amazing. We've made this movie what feels like it's been, I don't know, like, we made this film in like 1979. It's amazing how time flies. When you see me as best work, that's when you're 24. Anyway, you know, it's a funny thing. Every time I show this film, I think about Joe Spinell. And one of the things that Joe kept saying during the making of the picture was that this movie was going to, we were making a classic, and that this movie was going to be, and the words he used is, this is a happening, you know, this film was going to be, you know, a big film. And all I kept saying, Joe, let's just hope it plays on 42nd Street, Texas drive-ins. And Joe proved to be correct. You know, this film has lived forever. So far, it's continued to grow in popularity. And in fact, what's interesting is, from the time we made the film, when we got some of the worst reviews imaginable, in the last decade, all of a sudden, mainstream critics who have seen the film have started to give it like pretty decent reviews. So it's funny. I think when you're around long enough, I guess you get a little bit of respect. But this print you're about to see is a print that I just made recently. It cost a ton of money. It was made on the best Kodak stock imaginable, and it's in Dolby Digital, which it wasn't originally released in Dolby Digital. So you guys are going to see the movie better than what it played in 1981 in theaters throughout the world. So I hope you enjoy it. I'll be back after to do a Q&A, and I guess that's it. Thank you, Rue Morgue, and thank you all for coming.
Just trying to get the second mic working here.
Testicles, testicles.
Testicles, there we go. Vaginas, vaginas. Okay.
That. Here, you take this.
Okay. Oh, thank you for staying.
Yeah, we're going to,
I thought I was being interrogated.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to get all James Lipton on your ass here, and then we'll throw the floor open, and you can read some real
Yeah,
facts.
so you have those file cards that you want to put in the house?
Well, I got to make
My favorite curse word.
Oh, yeah, let's start it off that.
Oh, thank you. All right.
Put my child in it.
This is really good interrogation.
There's no vodka in that. There's no vodka in that.
All right, that's the first question.
Deal with it later. Okay. Well, Leonard Maltin, who's who's sort of my favorite whipping boy, called Maniac. An unrelenting exercise in nihilistic gore and claustrophobic and sickening, and I don't think he meant that in a good way.
Want me to comment on it?
Well, the thing is, a group of us went out to dinner last night, and you mentioned that you'd gotten your share of hate mail in the wake of Maniac. Maybe
Well, it's actually directly after the movie was released. It was, we became sort of the lightning rod for groups that were forming at the time, mostly women's groups who were appalled by movies where it depicted women being, murdered by killers and things like that. And so we received a lot of hate mail. We received a lot of news reports of people protesting in front of theaters and people defacing billboards, and the LA Times refused to run any advertising, even a mention of the movie in their listings. They wouldn't even put the word Maniac in their calendar section. It really pissed a lot of people off. One of the most interesting people it pissed off was a woman in LA, head of a women's group, named Eleanor Sneal, who stood in front of the theater, hadn't seen the film, but probably would have hated it just the same, and stood with the press with the ad for the movie, talking about how the movie defaced women and everything else. A year or so later, she was arrested for being an accomplice to a murder. And I don't know. I think throwing ketchup around is a little bit less offensive than being than rolling a guy for money. And actually, according to the charge against her, it preceded her standing in front of the theater, which I thought was interesting. It wasn't something that happened subsequent. It was something that happened with her years prior to her standing in front of the theater protesting my movie. So I love it. Somebody with blood on their hands.
Okay. Looking at the level of violence in Maniac, this strikes me as a classic case of people getting upset at what they think is just violence, but the tone of the film is a huge reason for it. For instance, I have a hard time imagining people getting so up in arms over The Evil Dead, which on certain levels is even more violent and was certainly seen by a lot more people.
Well, Evil Dead was a comic book, which it was a great movie. It's the best, Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2, I even like more. Maniac has a kind of a documentary quality to it. It was shot on location in New York. It was shot on Super 16, so it has that, grainy kind of newsreel feel to it. Plus, I think a lot of the intensity of the film comes from Joe Spinell. I mean, his performance is very intense, and what's also interesting about it is somehow he manages to create, I think with the audience, maybe you guys agree or disagree, but I think there's a certain empathy for him. He seems to be a very tortured soul, and which makes what he does even more disturbing.
Yeah, it certainly illustrates the fine line between empathy and sympathy, because sympathy we don't have, but empathy for sure.
Yeah, he's a very tortured soul. In fact, what was interesting is if you watch, when he was sitting on the bed, there's a moment where he starts rocking back and forth. Do you guys remember that? He's kind of doing this. Where I lived in New York and where I had my office was in my living room. Across the way from my office, there was another apartment building where you could easily see inside the windows. And Joe used to be fascinated. He would sit and watch this boy sitting on an edge of a bed, rocking back and forth like that. And he was trying to, figure out what was up with this. Is this an autistic kid, or is this somebody, what is his situation? He was really riveted to watching this guy and this boy. And so he incorporated that in his character, was that body movement. We don't really know what it is, but it's just interesting.
Yeah, a friend of mine does that. He's a guy in my band. He does that a lot.
Yeah.
Do you know, most of us here, of course, know Joe Spinell also wrote scripts. Do you know to what degree he based Frank Zito on specific real-life serial killers?
Well, what Joe did is is he did a lot of research. He created in his character a compilation of serial killers of that period. You'll see a bit of John Wayne Gacy, you'll see a bit of Son of Sam, David Berkowitz. There was also that guy, what was that guy who went around? It was real charming. Ted Bundy, I'm sorry, yeah, Ted Bundy, thank you. He really created a character that was a compilation. And I contributed basically the murder set pieces. So we kind of merged the two.
Okay.
And that was how we did it.
When you think of Joe Spinell, very few actors have ever played so many completely revolting characters as he did in so very many films. And I think it's kind of admirable that when he got the chance to write a role for himself, he wrote the most revolting character he would ever play, rather than something noble.
Well, I think what you're saying is a little unfair because I think Joe had a really wide range.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of, he really was a very gifted actor. He wasn't a one-note, he wasn't, he played a gangster, but, the thing about Joe was, when he was playing a role, he was totally committed to the truth of that character. Whether it was Willie Cheech in The Godfather, or the taxi dispatcher and taxi driver, or Rocky's loan shark, the loan shark who has Rocky go on and says, I told you to break the guy's thumbs, break the guy's thumbs. Joe was committed to truth of character. And he also, by the way, did his movies. Did you ever see films, a very obscure film called 92 in the Shade? Anybody ever seen it? Oh my God, it's a really cool movie. If you ever get a chance, it's got Warren Oates in it. And really good movie that Joe was in. And also, you guys see Stay Hungry, the movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger? Joe played like a southern businessman in that one.
Yeah.
So he really had a wide range of characters. He even did you guys see a movie called Winter Kills? No? Okay. He played Oswald. He played the assassin at the beginning, his head wrapped with bandages. So Joe playing and going and creating this character was very typical of Joe. He was a committed actor, and if the role called for him to be doing some despicable things, he did, and he did it with glee.
Yeah.
And what Joe really, when we were making this movie, the intent was, in Joe's mind and in mine, to make the ultimate horror film.
Yep.
And the ultimate horror at that time were these serial killers, and that's what he wanted to portray.
Yeah, I'm sure everybody here sort of remembers their first Maniac experience. It's sort of one of those things that you mark forever. And for me, it was in a friend's rec room with a small group of us on a lot of acid. You youngsters may remember acid is what your parents did before ecstasy. And I remember clearly thinking at the time, this is really well done, but it is totally rushing like buzz right now. That's just not what I wanted to see at the time. And then went back and watched it later and sort of developed a real appreciation for it. So.
Okay.
Can you tell me much about your own history with Joe Spinell prior to this collaboration?
I met Joe, I was working as a production assistant on a movie called The 7-Ups, and Joe played...
Was that really free?
No, it was actually directed by Philip D'Antoni, who was the producer of The French Connection.
Oh, Bowen.
He produced and directed this movie, The 7-Ups. It was not nearly as successful as French Connection.
Roy Scheider was in that as well.
Yeah, Roy Scheider and Tony Lobianco. And Joe was the most accessible actor you'll ever meet. I mean, he was the guy on the set who was friends with all the crew. They all loved him. He'd be the kind of guy, the makeup people, everybody loved him. And Joe and I started chatting about horror movies. And it turned out he was an aficionado of horror films. And we really struck up a chord because, when you guys all know this, when you meet somebody who's into horror, they're like really into horror, and you almost immediately Well, Joe and I formed a bond, and that led to us going to see movies together. After the movie was over, we went to see films together on 42nd Street. And Joe was an insomniac, and he would call me up, oh God, 3 in the morning, Billy, you awake? I go, no, but what is it, Joe? Well, it's a showing of Hollywood Hillside Strangler at this Liberty 42nd Street. It starts at 3:45. You want to go? I go, all right, Joe, I'll be right there. You know, throw on some clothes and jump in a taxi and meet him and watch Hollywood Hillside Strangler, and he'd be sitting there hysterical watching it. You know, just a grand old time. But that was Joe, and we saw a tourist trap, and I came along. We saw tons of horror films together. Until finally we said, you know, let's go make one.
Yeah.
And we started developing one kind of script, which was about a father and son serial killer team, which was actually existed. It was actually a father and son in New Jersey who went on a killing spree. And for whatever reason, we kind of lost interest in that project, and then we refocused on doing the movie when ultimately became Maniac.
But how long a process was that? Like your acquaintance until delivering Maniac?
Well, we shot Maniac in 1979, and I met Joe about 4 years prior to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was about 20 years old. Oh, yeah, no, it was actually 74, 75, around there. Because I hadn't done my porno from The Violation of Claudia. I did that when I was 21.
Billy Bang.
So I knew Joe, because Joe came on the set. You know,
Came on set or came on set?
he visited. He visited the set, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, Joe was more interested in visiting the set of that movie than probably some major studio film.
Starring Maniac.
Yeah, he just loved it. He got friendly with all the girls.
Yeah, he actually was something related to that.
Yeah, he had a gift for gab, you know, and women, you know, like that. You know, you don't notice it in when you watch a film like Maniac, you know, the way he looks is so, you know, pretty, you know, greasy. But, you know, Joe, in reality, was a pretty good-looking guy. And he would be a snappy dresser, and he was, you know, kind of guy. He really had good rap, and of course, he had celebrity. He was in all these big movies, and which were highly popular at that time. So, you know, all that together, you know, he had a way of scoring. You know, he really did. He was amazing. He's the star of some of his conquests. I go, what? Really? You know, art? No. But he had a thing for porn chicks.
For what?
Porn chicks.
He married?
He did. He married a porn chick. Jean, her name was something. Her stage name was Jean Jennings. And I talked about it on the commentary for Maniac, but just tell you briefly, when we went to see, he was married to her. He was already married to her, but they had a very tumultuous relationship, to say the least. And she went off to San Francisco during their marriage to do a porn film for the Mitchell brothers called Autobiography of a Flea. And the movie was released, and Joe comes to my office and says, Bill, let's go out to the movies. We go downstairs, and we, you know, go from my office, we take a walk. He goes, I go, what movie am I going? He goes, well, you know, Cynthia, you know, she's in this movie, I'd like to go see it. And so I go, oh God, I don't want to go through this. And so we go to the movie, and if you ever been to a porn theater at that time, they were very quiet. You know, nobody really said anything. Nobody drew attention to themselves. So Joe wants to sit in the front, and I sit about 6 rows behind him because I don't want to sit next to him because I don't know what he's going to do when he sees on screen. And back then you could actually smoke in the theater, so
similar times.
Yeah. So Joe was in front. He's smoking a cigarette, and he wasn't really a smoker. Very rarely did he smoke. But he was sitting in the front, and now on comes his wife, and she says some really lame joke, you know, something that's supposed to be funny. Joe bursts out laughing. Nobody else in the theater was laughing, and I'm looking at him, and I'm going, oh, when's he going to go nuts? So we watched the whole movie, and we walk out of the theater afterwards, and Joe starts questioning me. He Well, she didn't really lie to me. You know, she did look like she was enjoying it. And, you know, when she had, you know, that thing in her mouth, she wasn't really enthusiastic about it. And I could really see, you know, she didn't let the guy, you know, ejaculate on her face, you know. And I listened to him trying to justify why his wife was being loyal to him while I just watched her in a porno film. It was definitely an interesting marriage.
That segues rather nicely with my next one. Porn stars have, you know, tried to break in mainstream film, you know, with varying degrees of success. Usually not. That's mostly in more recent years. When you were doing Maniac, that was basically unheard of. So what can you tell us about working with Abigail Clayton and Sharon Mitchell?
Well, Sharon Mitchell, I mean, she's only in the movie briefly. She's really, you know, she's kind of like a one-line thing, you know, kind of thing. And Abigail, that was Joe. Joe had a thing for her. It was Gail Lawrence, Joe.
No, I mean, who among us doesn't know?
Yeah, well, Joe had a crush on Gail. And so that was actually the very first day of shooting, was that scene with her in that apartment and Joe coming to the door. That was our very, very first day of shooting. And, yeah, we used her. Well, you have to understand something. We did not do this movie under what's called Screen Actors Guild. We avoided Screen Actors Guild by telling them that we were making an X-rated movie, and so Screen Actors Guild had no union jurisdiction over an X-rated film. Therefore, Joe could work on the film with impunity. You know, he was really able to work on it, didn't have to worry about getting fined or kicked out of the union. So we were looking for other actors who would work with us who weren't afraid of getting in trouble. And so porn actors are more likely than not going to be open to doing that. And Gail, you know, she did it. It wasn't a very challenging role, but she did it.
That's what it herself well. I'm sure there's, you know, there's an instance where you're not worried about an actress balking at a nude scene.
Oh yeah, that was the other thing. She was totally out.
Yeah.
No big deal.
You're going to die horribly in this film, and nobody's going to come in your face.
Yeah, I guess that kind of sums up the direction.
Regarding some other people who worked on it, Tom Savini, obviously, his star was very much on the rise, sort of in the wake of Dawn of the Dead and Friday the 13th.
Yeah, but those films hadn't been released yet.
They hadn't been?
No, we actually hired him, and he was working on the original Friday the 13th in New Jersey. He came from that film to Maniac, and the reason he took Maniac wasn't because of the money, because we had none. It was because he had just broken up with a girl in Pittsburgh and didn't want to have to go home. So we offered him an apartment in New York, so he could hang out in New York, and he worked on a movie and didn't get paid very much. And but he was interesting, Tom. He was still recovering from this breakup, and I had these speakers in my office that were floor speakers, and there was this really sappy Lionel Richie song.
Was that the other guy?
Yeah, called, I think it's called Still. It was like a real sappy ballad. Well, I'd be at my desk, and next thing I know, the song comes on, and I look over, and there's Tom Savini sitting on the floor with his ear to the speaker, crying his eyes out.
It wasn't an effect.
No, it wasn't an effect. I was like, I'm going, oh God, this guy is as nuts as all of us. This is great. Yeah, but anyway, that's how Tom came aboard the picture.
I was, in my meticulous preparation for tonight, I was reading some online reviews of Maniac yesterday, and I came across one critic who said that basically any film with a gore sequence by Savini, whether it's directed by George Romero or whoever else, that sequence is, for all intents and purposes, directed by Savini. At first I thought, well, that's kind of unfair, and then I thought about it a little more, and what's your take on that?
You know, I don't recall Savini being very, I don't recall him really giving very much input into camera angles or lighting. He might have given a little bit, but it wasn't, he didn't take over the shots. Yeah, you defer to them. But Savini, I don't recall that being the case, at least on movie Maniac. I don't recall it.
Yeah. There's a conversation I had with our mutual friend, the Serbian She-Wolf over here. We were actually discussing some film by Franck, but it came down to the whole New York grime thing, and that led to sort of a broader discussion of New York directors who insist on showing New York as hell on earth. And yet you guys seem to love the place, but there's this whole long list of directors who always seem to portray New York that way.
Yeah.
Any insight there?
Well, I think New York has always been the symbol for urban, I mean, from movies like, Sweet Smell of Success, and, the film noirs and the arcade old film noirs. New York has always been depicted as being a dangerous city and being a place like that. And at the time, frankly, at the time we did Maniac, New York was dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, the 70s and early 80s, that was really,
yeah, I mean, it really was. It was treacherous, and Times Square was not the Disneyland as it is today.
Not Giuliani's New York.
No, it was a very dangerous, gritty. I'll give you an example. That scene with me in the lobby of that hotel.
Must be great.
The problem with that was Joe kept writing on that card stupid things to make me laugh. So it took forever to shoot that. Because he kept writing, he'd be looking at me with that, that stern face, but he'd be writing like, I forget, I wish he'd say all that stuff. Anyway, so when we were shooting that scene, detectives came to the hotel because there had been a recent murder of these two supposed prostitutes at a motel on 42nd Street, and they were investigating where the killer was, and they thought he might have been at that hotel. So the detectives came there, and they were basically searching for this killer. So, I mean, while you're making a movie, you've got the, real-life detectives investigating murders around you.
Death and taking art.
Exactly. That was kind of eerie, what they did is they took the clothes. They couldn't identify the girls because they cut their heads off. The killer cut their heads off.
Was that Jerry Bruno's?
I don't recall. But what they did is they took a window in the police station. They have like a small police station in Times Square, and they took a window and they dressed mannequins in the clothes of the girls who were murdered to see if anybody could help to identify them. Isn't that weird?
And that has nothing to do with the,
bizarre.
I was watching a scene from the horror of Party Beach where it's exactly like that, where the monsters are getting fascinated by it.
That's why I think it's in our DNA as directors who live in New York, that you don't, that you look at the place as, taxi driver and all that, that's what it was. Today, of course, it's totally changed.
Yep.
Totally changed. Now I live in a neighborhood that, you wouldn't be caught dead, and you probably would be dead if you were caught there.
Yeah.
I live in Alphabet City, which was really bad back in those days.
Whenever I see that first shot of Frank's apartment, what comes to mind for me is like art director's wet dream. Now, did all of you have a hand in that, or was that one person who designed it?
As I said, Joe was a very friendly guy, and he was very supportive of people's dreams and aspirations. Joe met a guy, a Russian, aspiring art director in the East Village, and Joe brought him around and said, let's give this guy a shot. We need somebody to build the set. This guy did sets in Russia, and we can use him to do this movie. Okay, so I remember we hired the guy. We had a small studio, and we set him up, and we kind of left him alone because we were shooting other scenes for the movie. And one day we decided to visit to get a progress on how the set was going. Well, he was not building the set, he was building an apartment. He was actually, the walls didn't move, I think if we had waited another day, he would have installed plumbing and electricity. So this guy was like serious about what he was doing. Anyway, the artwork that you see on the wall is this guy's artwork. All that's this guy's stuff.
One guy, I was wondering about that. Was one guy or
It was one guy.
It was one with
Yeah, all that stuff was his artwork, and Joe was like, you know, he thought this guy was, he was an interesting guy. I can't remember his name or anything, but yeah, that was one of Joe's finds.
Yeah.
It was this guy.
That's great. Before we throw the floor around, I got just one more. Obviously, down the years, you've worked in a number of different capacities in the film industry, and in recent years, you've been sort of a key player in the reissue business. When you look back at the home vid boom, was there a point or like an epiphany when you suddenly went, I have to get in on this business?
No, actually, my getting into the DVD business was totally by accident. I had a hobby of, while I was making movies, I had a hobby of acquiring the rights to films, restoring them, and putting them out on Laserdisc. And Laserdisc was a very tiny, very niche market.
Yep.
Well, I met somebody at a company called Anchor Bay, who, you know, we started talking, and he basically acquired the rights to those films that I put on Laserdisc for video, and we started a relationship. You know, we started talking about movies and things like this, and then one thing led to another, and he asked if I would help him out for 6 months in getting Anchor Bay DVD started.
Yep.
They wanted to get into the DVD business. They were stuck in Michigan. They wanted somebody based in LA who could help them get into the DVD business, as far as from a technical standpoint,
Yep.
not from anything else. And I did, and that 6 months turned into like 40 years.
Yep.
And so we built up the Anchor Bay DVD. I wound up towards the end doing 8 titles a month for the company. I had a team. I had about a dozen or so employees, and then Anchor Bay management decided they were going to sell the company. We didn't know what was going to happen. I had hired all these people. I felt responsible. So, make a long story short, we started Blue Underground, and that was sort of that started out of us doing the Anchor Bay DVDs.
Did you ever have like a sort of your one grail fletched film or the one that got away?
Oh, I've had many that have gotten away, that I've searched for. There's always so many reasons that, you know, films are unattainable. You know, I tend to, the films that I tend to be attracted to, like I'll give you an example. It's a different company. It's a Criterion. Just put out a movie that I wish I had put out. I absolutely love the movie. I know I would have lost money on it, but it really was a film. And have you seen Blast of Silence? No? None of you have seen it? Criterion Collection? You guys run out to get this movie. It's not mine. I don't make a nickel from it. But it's a really, really terrific movie.
It's an American.
What's that?
American?
It's an American film from the early 60s. I'll tell you another film that Criterion beat me on that I really wanted was Honeymoon Killers.
Oh yeah.
I absolutely love that movie. I just think that movie is just one of the best films of its kind that I really so desperately wanted, and I was courting the producer, and he rightfully did a deal with Criterion, and I'm pleased it went to them. When I lose a movie to Criterion, I'm okay with that.
That's not so bad.
No. Well, this is me off when I lose money to a movie to somebody like Image, and I know they're going to put out a piece of crap, and it's so frustrating.
Yeah, I guess we're ready to throw the floor
I
open
have a
here.
quick one, quickly. Tell them about E.T. and Maniac together.
Oh, actually, that was E.T. and Vigilante.
Oh, was it Vigilante?
Yeah, that was, a typical, here's an interesting Grindhouse double feature. My movie, Vigilante, played for several months on 42nd Street as a second feature with E.T. Can you imagine the family going experience that? That's a true story. Spielberg still thanks me.
So we've got this one first back here. Go ahead, please.
Joe Spittle was a hemophiliac. Did that hinder the filmmaking at all?
I was just asked, Joe was a hemophiliac. Did that interfere with the filming? No, it didn't. Joe was a hemophiliac, and yet he was stupid enough when he got drunk and high to get into fights. And that was Joe. He was nuts.
I was just wondering, how did you meet and get involved with your composer, Jay Chataway?
Okay, I was just asked about Jay Chataway, the composer for the score of Maniac, which I think is a really great score. What happened was we originally were going to use Goblin to do the music. For a brief time, Dario Argento was going to be our partner on the movie Maniac, and for one reason or another it didn't work out. And Goblin was going to do the music, and so now it came time to do the music. I had nobody, and we went to a concert. I went with my partner, my producer partner. We went to a concert at Lincoln Center of Gato Barbieri. No, it wasn't Scott, Maynard Ferguson. It was Maynard Ferguson. And we went backstage afterwards and met Maynard Ferguson, but we also met Jay Chataway. And we started talking to Jay. And I don't know what happened, but I just got a good feeling about it. I just got a feeling about a guy who could do it. I can't point to anything, but because he really wasn't a horror guy. You know, this guy was like, lived in Connecticut, family man. There was nothing about him that in any way pointed to the fact that, horror would be his forte. In fact, the score that he did prior to this was for some Michael Winner film called Firepower, some really kind of lame-ass movie. And so what Jay did is he really created a non-horror score for a lot of the movie. He really kind of got into the depth of the character and came up with music that would be kind of untraditional for this kind of a movie.
That's something I noticed a lot too. I mean, there are a lot of John Carpenter style singers in there, but the actual theme music is, whereas a lot of people would have gone for something very bombastic, he came up with this very mournful thing with all that fretless bass, which sort of sounds like a cello.
Right. This guy was a very talented guy, and we worked together many times after that. And he worked with other friends of mine, like Jersey. He did the score about Invasion USA, he did the score for Invasion USA. And Larry Cohen, sort of 6 degrees of separation. But yeah, all these guys started using Jay because he's just a wonderful, talented man. And he made a fortune doing the score for Star Trek. So he's very comfortable right now.
Yeah.
Who's up next? And he deserves it. Anybody else?
Back there, you. Hey.
This morning, I remember, I remember the poster art for Maniac terrifying me, like the shot of with the crotch. I was wondering who did that, and was there a lot of protest because of that image, which freaked me out?
The question was regarding the poster for the film. It's whether or not it caused controversy. Is that sum it up? And the answer is yes. And the one who initially was pissed off about it was Joe, because he made us promise that his face would be on the poster, not a depiction of an erection in the pants. And so, Joe for a period of time cursed me, hated me, thought I betrayed him, everything else, and that's what happened there.
Very nice.
Did you get any royalties from Eli Roth for ripping that off for Hostel?
No, but I got
poster.
a signed poster from Eli thanking me for the inspiration.
Also,
I have framed in my apartment.
one more. The opening scene of Maniac. Is that not an homage to Blood Feast?
Actually, you're talking about the one on the beach?
Yeah, the beach scene. No?
Maybe a little bit of Jaws. Could be. Yeah, actually, you're right. You just brought it back. The original inspiration, I know this sounds really bizarre, but I was driving up 8th Avenue with Frank Pesh. Anybody see a movie called 29th Street? That was about this guy, Frank Pesh. And Frank turned to me as he was driving. He says, nobody's ever made a movie like Jaws on land. And I don't know how I took Jaws on land and turned it into Maniac. But that was somehow the started Maniac. I can't really find a connection in it, but but I think the opening scene on the beach is probably the most tenuous connection between those two films.
Okay, anybody else? Oh, yep.
Did you guys try and drum up any of your own press, stir the pot with them at all, or?
Did we try to drum up press?
Yeah, like any negative press itself, just to gain more attention to the film?
No, I was ducking. I was hiding. We had more press than we could handle. It was, we weren't going to get any positive press, but we got tons of negative. And no, I was laying low.
I just wanted to ask, what has Maniac given you over the years?
Money.
Like in terms of like a film career?
Well, it gave me credibility. Certainly the film's success gave me credibility, but I think that anybody who tells you that, one film makes a career, it doesn't. Because what somebody said to me was very interesting, but somebody said something to me, and it really stuck in my head. It was that if you do something and you do it well, what really makes somebody have a career is if they could do it repeatedly. And it's always stuck in my head that, every time you get an opportunity, and in my case, to make a movie, that film, you need to make it better. You need to go a step further. You've got to constantly challenge yourself to do better and to make something, and I've been very, very blessed that I've had some successes in my career. I've had some that weren't successful, but I've had pretty good track record of success. I can't believe it or not. I had Maniac Cop, which had 3 Maniac Cops. I had a picture I made called Relentless, which it was Relentless 2, 3, 4. Even Vigilante. There was a sequel made in Italy called Vigilante 2. And so I've been able to create films. I've had my share of films that have been able to be sequelized, and I think that ultimately creates a career.
With somebody back here who got usurped there. Yeah, usurped.
Actually, I got 2 questions. First, you made a lot of very cool movies. Do you think you're going to direct again anytime soon?
That's a good question. I think that directing is something where it's dictated by material. You see, I don't need to direct a movie to pay my rent. I did at one time. It was my main source of income. And now that I have my company Blue Underground up and running, I don't have to worry about where the next dollar is coming from. And so so I'm not hungry to make another film in that sense. And I haven't really found material that I really said, oh God, I want to see this. I want to make this movie. I really want to get this going. And I would say the other thing that is troubling to me today is it's so unlikely that a film made on a modest budget is ever going to see the inside of the theater like we're all experiencing today. So why make a movie that's only going to play on home video, that's only possibly going to play on television? To me, that's like a tree falling in the forest. My fun is in watching an audience respond. I grew up with that. I didn't grow up making a movie to some faceless, machine. And so, for that, there's not even that gratification. So, the potential for that gratification. So I can't find in myself the energy and the desire to go out there and fight to make a picture. I just don't. But someday maybe something will come my way, and I'll say, you know what? I want to go out. I want to make this happen. But it hasn't happened recently.
Okay. Sorry, I did have a second one, but go ahead.
Oh, well, I'm done.
Okay. So just my second question was about, has anybody approached you about remaking Maniac?
Yes.
And how would you feel about that?
Delighted. It's money. It's a lot of money. A company I've been in discussions with. It's actually the key person involved is a very credible, relatively high-profile director of horror films, and his producer. He wants to remake Maniac, and we're in negotiations for
Given your druthers, given the Spinells out of the picture now, who would be your dream cast there?
I actually suggested Tom Sizemore. Oh yeah, I think Tom Sizemore is a reincarnation of Joe.
Yeah, with better skin.
Yeah, he has that same, you know, there's a lot of Joe in Tom Sizemore. Even his career mirrors a lot of what Joe had. So I thought he'd be like the perfect lead for the movie, and they all thought it was a great idea, so who knows? You know, they'll probably put a rat. You, sir.
Yeah, I always wondered how far does acting go in terms of that kind of character Joe has to play? Like, when is it, like, what, do you reach a peak where it's no longer acting? And then, does that scare you and does that scare Joe? Has it ever scared either of you guys?
Joe was, the question was about Joe, and did it ever really get out of hand, his performance and all that. I can say this, as soon as you say cut, Joe was out of character.
But when he was character, what was that about for him? What was that like for him when he was in character? Like, does that scare you? Does that scare him?
No, he's acting. He's pretending. He's not, you know, he's pretending. Yeah, Joe was very much the Joker, you know, very much a kind of guy who just joked, and then as soon as he'd say, okay, you ready, you know, let's roll it, we would do it, and right after we'd say cut, he would be like, you know, kidding around with everybody. That's the way he was. He was intense for those moments, you know, whatever beats we needed, he would make happen. But he wasn't like a method actor who kind of carried the character around with him. You know, maybe to some degree, but no, not really. Any other questions?
Oh, sorry.
So you spent a lot of time on 42nd Street, obviously. You experienced it firsthand. What do you think about the love affair of the Grindhouse right now?
The love affair of the Grindhouse. Is there really a love affair of the Grindhouse?
There's a marketing love affair. A marketing love affair.
Yeah, it's a marketing love affair.
I've quoted you twice on an interview that I didn't even do with how disappointing a lot of that affair was back in the day. I've had to review some reissues of would-be Grindhouse. It was a total letdown.
Well, you know, I don't know. I mean, I think for me, the Grindhouse experience was having a smorgasbord of films to choose from, and that, to me, was the fun part about it. Now, you know, you have a multiplex, and they're showing, you know, somebody was just telling me there's a 24-screen multiplex nearby here, and 8 of the screens are showing Iron Man. And, you know, it was different. It was wonderful because there were surprises too, you know. There wasn't the internet, so, you know, you would, of course, more times than not be let down by the movie, but then every now and then when the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, you know, came to light, or Night of the Living Dead, or Dario Argento film, or something like that, it just blew you away. You were like, you know, intoxicated by it because you saw something that you weren't prepared to see. Now, it's like movies are so, I don't know, they're so exposed, you know. You can watch the trailers on the internet. It's like, I don't know. It's different. It was fun back then. It was the, you know, it was fun. You know, the theaters themselves were pretty ratty, but you know, hey, I saw a rat while I was sitting down here before I run up to the stage, so I guess you guys have a little neck while I'm here.
Sorry, the early home vid days were kind of the same deal, and very much a crapshoot, and you had to be willing to wade through a big sea of shit to find Maniac, or to find Evil Dead, or
but also,
very much word of mouth.
Yeah, the difference was you didn't have to make a commitment to go to the cinema and see it. Yeah, that's the difference. Yeah. You could fast forward, you could hit the eject button, but you didn't have to sit in the movie and say, oh my God, I made the commitment to come down here. But you know, it was just, I credit the Grindhouse as a 42nd Street as being my film school. That was my film school. I learned about editing, I learned about camera work, all that from watching those movies.
And
How long did it take for you to
complete Maniac, and what was the cost of the film at the time?
What was the cost and how long it would take us to complete? The shooting on Maniac, I think, was somewhere around 25 days, maybe a couple of days of pickup shots after that. And the cost of the film at the time, cash, was a total of $135,000.
So I'm hallucinating here. Anyone else? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say, do you think you could make something even perhaps cheaper that could, make it into theaters as you did?
No, I don't. I think that it's possible, but I think it's like going to Vegas and putting money on black. I think it's a real crapshoot. I think that the bar has been, is raised so high, and there are other factors as well. I mean, I think there's we can go into things. I think there's a monopoly of studios and big independents who have locked up the theaters. And if you're not part of that cartel of distributors, you're more likely than not be able to get it.
Submitting it to a distributor, like submitting an independent film to a distributor.
What's that?
Like, I don't know if you did something to New Line Cinema or Alliance.
Well, New Line's out of business. They folded. Well, they retrenched, really, I should say. Well, I mean, that's a possibility. It's just become much more difficult, and there's so many other factors that come to play. It used to be in the theatrical business there was a democracy. Now it was always tilted towards the studios, but if your film was successful, it would play, and money would be made. Same thing for television. If your film went to a certain level, it would get on the paid TVs and stuff like that. That doesn't exist anymore. You can't sell it as an independent. HBO will not buy your movie. Showtime will not buy your movie. The free TV will not buy your movie. It's just the way it is. It's all locked up by the studios and the big independents.
My close personal friend over here has a question.
Sure.
Can you tell us the story about Joe Spinell's suggestion to have a theme song for me?
Oh, okay. Before. One of the things Joe kept harping on while we were making the film, among other things, he was harping on, we need a song for the movie. I kept saying, Joe, this kind of movie doesn't let us.
Love theme from Maniac.
Yeah. Well, his position was, hey, Bill, is it any stupider than Michael Jackson singing to a rat? The movie Ben. I don't know if you guys saw the movie Ben. Yeah. Is it any stupider than that? I said, no, Joe, no. But, this doesn't fit. Anyway, cut to about 5 years later, the movie Flashdance comes out, and there's the song Maniac in the movie. And Joe, I'm talking to Joe one day, and he says, that song Maniac was written about our movie Maniac. Oh yeah, Joe, because Joe had, he could lend himself to exaggerating certain things. And, so I kind of put one ear out the other, just Joe trying to get back at me, make me think that I missed an opportunity. Well, a few years ago, I never watched MTV, I never watched VH1, but for whatever reason, and I believe this is a God moment where Joe came down and turned my channel to VH1. They had a program called One Shot Wonders. And within a minute of my watching this, they had a segment about Michael Sembello and the song Maniac. And they had an interview with him who said, this movie I wrote, I was inspired by this movie Maniac, and they all of a sudden cut to the poster of the movie. And I'm sitting there, my jaws on the floor. It was just a totally amazing thing. So that was it. Joe, was telling me the truth. That song Maniac was inspired by the movie. So every time you see Jennifer Gills doing her aerobics, think of Maniac.
Every 80s stripper, okay. Is that about it? Gonna wind it up here?
Thank you all for coming.
binding.
Busy.
We go there.
How are you? Good job.
Yeah, you gotta bring your own pen.
I know, yeah, that sounds good.
How's Joe doing? See much of him? Brian?
No, I guess I talked to him. A few weeks ago. I guess after I did the Argento thing. That was the last time I like phoned him up.
Oh, he's already got Savini to sign it.
Yeah, you know that always happens, right? You want me to take the shot with this one? Right? So, right? All right. True story.
So